All right, everyone. We are at the top of the hour. Good afternoon and very warm welcome to Sharm Originals series, The Hybrid Workplace 2025 in partnership with Zimyo. A three-season series which has a host of great learning content in multiple formats coming your way this year. Today, we are launching episode 1 of the season 1 in form of a webcast. And this is called The Distributed Digital Workplace, The Rise of New Organizational Models. Well, I'm Neha Pant. I'm part of the Knowledge and Advisory team at SHRM India, and I'm going to be your host for the next 60 minutes. I, of course, have some eminent guests with me here on the panel, but before I introduce them to you, I wanted to highlight a few things. This is a webcast, so it'll be recorded and available for viewing on our website. Participants' audio and video is disabled. However, that shouldn't discourage you from participating in this conversation. So do interact with us. Our primary mode of interaction would be chat. So, these conversations, of course, come alive with your contributions. So do keep sharing those comments. Tell us the insights. Tell us what's happening in your organizations. So keep chatting with us on that chat window. If you have questions, feel free to post them at any time. I will integrate those questions in our conversation as we go along. All right, so on that note, let me introduce you to someone who you may already be familiar with for the great social influencer that he is. Well, I have with me here Abhijit Bhadri. He's a digital transformation coach, keynote speaker, author, and columnist. He is a talent management practitioner with global experience across various sectors, ex-chief learning officer for Wipro, a role that he worked for 7 years, an alumnus of Microsoft, PepsiCo, Colgate, and Tata Steel. He's been exposed to globally acknowledged best practices in leadership and culture building. Forbes describes him as one of the most interesting globalists. LinkedIn voted him as a must-know writer. More than 500,000 followers on LinkedIn and Twitter follow his short-form articles and sketches. That's not all. He's written numerous articles and about 5 books, which I just confirmed with him. Some of them being Don't Hire the Best, Digital Tsunami, and more recently, Dreamers and Unicorns. Welcome, Abhijit. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so much for having me here.
All right. Next, we have Saili Karanchkar, board advisor at Zimyo. Saili has actually backed Zimyo's stellar team as an investor and an advisor. She joined the board of Zimyo to advise on building fintech products and its global expansion. Saili is also the co-founder of PaySense, a leading consumer lending company where she led the business growth and operations functions. PaySense got acquired by PayU, a leading payments and fintech company, in an all-cash deal for an equity value of about $185 million. Saili holds an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, a master's in engineering management from Northwestern University, and a bachelor's degree from the National University of Singapore. Welcome, Saili. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Neha.
And thanks once again, both of you, for making time. Before we get started, with our conversation today, I thought I actually wanted to, read a few lines that I came across in an article that was written by Klaus Schwab, who's founder and executive chairman of World Economic Forum. And I thought that, it made a lot of sense in the new scheme of things that we find ourselves in, in still, of course, the pandemic time, so to say. He goes on to say that human ingenuity is at the root of all shared prosperity. As the frontier between the work tasks performed by humans and those performed by machines and algorithms shifts, we have a short window of opportunity to ensure that these transformations lead to a new age of good work, good jobs, and improved quality of life for all. In the midst of the pandemic recession, this window is closing fast. Businesses, governments, and workers must plan to work together to implement a new vision for the global workplace and the workforce. Well, on that note, more recently, SHRM also launched the New Workplace 2025 report and, talked about this shift, which is, of course, a no-brainer now, that remote work will be among the biggest business trends in the coming years, though it won't be the only lingering effect from the pandemic. Now, with that, I actually wanted to start our conversation today about the distributed digital workplace. And Saili, I wanted to begin with you first. I wanted to understand. Now we have talked about future of work quite often, right? And I think we've been looking at our crystal balls and really predicting what the future of work is going to really look like. I wanted to ask you: do you think the future of work has actually arrived, and what does it look like for you from where you stand?
I actually never like to think of anything has arrived. It's everything is always evolving and changing. So, um, what I do believe is that we are on a path of change that was in place when many digital technologies were adding to our workforce. We were seeing people uh, joining teams from different places, etc. But all of that kind of accelerated many times over due to COVID. Companies had to shut down offices overnight, move to remote working styles overnight. And after the initial shock, it did lead to a lot of innovations, both in organizational culture, in the digital tech we use, in the privacy care that we use, and also thinking about business continuity, resilience of an organization, a lot of these things. So I think all of these thoughts were not always at the forefront. Organizations were many times built for efficiency or they were built for innovation, but they were not necessarily built for resilience. Now, resilience comes top of mind because we saw things go down overnight, and we can't, as a community, as an organization, as a country, just go down. We cannot be brought to our knees so easily anymore. So, I think something has put everybody to think that how do we become a resilient organization? How do we become resilient from our product?
Right.
Restaurants shut down, but they wouldn't be if they were always part of a safety process of home delivery. A lot of things wouldn't shut down so easily if resilience was top of mind for management. So I think that change is coming. The digital technologies change is coming. We have people who enjoyed working from the mountains, working from the beaches, but it actually opens your eyes to having access to a lot better talent because now you don't have to say that आपको train पकड़ के Santa Cruz station ही आना है. You can say that you can be anywhere, work from anywhere. I can access talent from
Right.
Europe because the engineering skills that I need were found there and I like them and I want them to join. And I can use a lot of digital tools to have the teams still talk to each other, connect with each other, etc. So I think it's evolving at a faster rate than before COVID. And the future will look different because people have adopted the behavioral change due to the necessity of COVID. So behavior change went through faster than ever, and I think we'll get there. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Okay,
what
wonderful.
I
Thank
thought.
you. Thank you so much for that insight. And I hear you say that it's not arrived, it's still evolving. And Abhijit, on that note, I wanted to come to you. 2020, we really talked about all the evolution that we were going through. What's your sense? Are we still evolving? There's some, there are some conjectures, so to say, that what was really this future of work that we've been talking about. I mean, and the pace with which it has come to us, and the whole digital transformation that we've experienced in 2020. What will be your take to that?
Thanks, Neha. I think, building on what Sally said, I would like to just take another different way of looking at it. Is that, when we talk about future of work, I think we are leaving out two-thirds of the equation because when work changes, workers will change and the workplaces will change. I mean, so think about it, and these three are interlinked. The moment you have one change, the others do. So when work moves home, for example, from the office setting, it means a different style of working. So one could argue that you always had when you had multinationals who were operating in different countries. So people are used to working in different teams, virtual teams, etc. So that's not new, really. But I think the opportunity for that to become so widespread that regardless of sector, regardless of size of the organization, that I think is the big shift, the universality. So earlier also we would say that some of this, people who are in white collar jobs, they could actually come in and do some work on a remote basis. Today, that all white collar jobs by and large has become remote. What we also see is that it's not just that, but it's also some blue collar jobs also can be done in a remote way. So I think our definition of how we work has changed. As Sally said, that we have access to talent worldwide. The flip side of that is also that I could be sitting in Bangalore and doing work for a company in Ukraine. It works both ways. So I think definitions of employee engagement, attrition, all of that will have to be re-examined. And of course, workplaces will look very different.
Right. And while you say that, Abhijit, workplaces will look different. We have about 98 people who've joined us, so far. So what I'm going to do is maybe I'll bring up my Menti screen and ask people, how are their organizations really evolving? Right. So just give me a second as I bring up my Menti screen. So everyone, here is what we want to know from you. In a couple of words, if you could tell us, how your organizations, have evolved in the last 1 year. And to do that, you could use a separate browser window or you could use your mobile device. Go to menti.com and use the code that's flashing on your screens. You'll see it on top, 2457930. And tell us, what does it look like for you? Are you going the hybrid route as well? Okay, so we've hit 100 now. We should be able to generate a nice word cloud with about 100 responses. So go ahead, everyone. Okay, we have our first response, hybrid workforce. So we are assuming that that has already happened. Okay, tell us more. Okay, great. Flexible and hybrid is standing in the middle. Reskill, restart. Wonderful. So for those of you who've just joined, go to your mobile devices, type in menti.com on your browser window and type in that code and tell us in 2 words, how has your organization evolved in the last 1 year? We have 11 responses so far, so let's make it quick. I'll give you another minute to do this.
So Neha, I think the key word which is standing out is hybrid. That's clearly the biggest one. And then of course, dynamic, which means when we think about the new normal, there's no such thing as a new normal anymore. It's still evolving, like Saili said. It is like the horizon. As you walk towards it, it still seems out of reach.
Yeah. Survival, look at that. Last year was the key word.
Yeah.
Okay, satellite, hybrid. Hybrid is work in progress. That's what someone in the participant group says. But yeah, of course, hybrid is the way to go. Now, I'll also check with our audiences in terms of how far are we from that hybrid, sort of an org model. And I'll bring up that poll question in just a bit. But yeah, I think we have about 26 responses so far. Maybe I'll give it 30 more seconds. Blended form of working, restructuring, reskill. So reskilling and flexible and work from home, of course, that's what's standing out. What stood out for you, Saili?
So one thing that stood out was the flexibility. We could really make it flexible, but with a lot of thought. Like initially, we all got on a lot of calls, 9 to 9 kind of work kind of schedule, where people thought that they're working a lot more from home than when they used to come to the office, because all the commute time, all the lunch time, chai time, everything had converted to work meetings. So that was not good because they lost the connection with each other. They also lost the space to figure out the balance between family life and work life. So then we started being a little bit more flexible, started being a little bit more cognizant that people might want to cook lunch, feed lunch to the family, kids, etc. And we started having a more flexible day with people able to block calendars for their family chores, etc. And we did talk about that, which made everybody feel recognized for what they have to do in their life other than work. And I think that really worked well. In the future, too, I think that gives a thought of additional flexibility that families might need, and actually being being able to access a lot more talent, whether it's new mothers, whether it's fathers trying to help their wives balance their work and kids' life and responsibilities, or elderly people in the house. Everybody can do better if the work is more flexible. Of
Right.
course, that will come with two things. One is organizational change, where you have to be able to trust the employee to deliver on their work no matter when and where they're doing it. It will also add tools to monitor work progress, whether it's watching the computer, watching the task that the employee is finishing, and so on. So it will be a combination of all the carrot and sticks and investigative tools involved. But it can be done, and it can unlock a lot of potential, because people can work lots of different shifts. People can take 80% kind of jobs, that I have a part-time 80% job, and there is another person sharing that position with somebody else, putting in 20-30% of the job. So a lot of new models can be developed while breaking out our thinking of that here are the tasks that can easily be done and easily be verified or checked by another system. These are the tasks that need people to be in the office, so let's form another situation there. So I think that flexibility has opened our minds to think of new models of working, and that opening of the minds is the biggest lesson, at least I have learned over the last year. And I feel excited about that. That let's use all these new ideas and let's not lose sight of them just because the vaccine happened. Let's actually use them to our benefit,
Yeah.
to create global companies out of here, to build new startups out of here. And I feel like that is a real opportunity.
Right, right. So, while you say that, and, from what we've experienced last year, and in some ways, I think there is consensus that it will be a hybrid workplace model, right?
Mhm.
But like you mentioned, vaccination, and that's what I'm wondering to myself that when, let's say, the pandemic ends, while we may still wear masks, we still may be scared of the next strain of the virus, but let's say the pandemic ends, what's going to happen? Can we really go back to the way we used to work? Or are we really sure that hybrid is the only way to go? And at this point, what I wanted to do is I wanted to launch this poll and maybe check with our audiences, what's really, what is it really looking like for their organizations? While we know services sector can work in a hybrid model more effectively, but what happens to other industries and other sectors, and especially those essential services, frontline workers who cannot be in a hybrid sort of a model, right? So let's see, we have about 111 participants, and my guess is, of course, the higher representation is of services, which is why you see the hybrid combination. But yeah, on that note, Abhijit, what do you think? Can a vaccine and end of pandemic make us go back to our
No,
old
it
ways?
doesn't. I mean, when you look at the changes that have happened in our airlines, after 9/11, the Twin Towers attack, most of those changes that happened have really stayed on. If anything at all, these got layered. So, we'll figure out different ways, but I think 4 or 5 shifts which have been there are going to remain permanent. So, I think we'll remain very comfortable with this hybrid model. That's one. I think we'll also get comfortable with managing contradictions, like whether we should be more online or offline, or where it's a combination, full time versus part time. The other is that these shifts are going to continue to happen. If it is not because of the vaccine, it'll be for some other reason. And one thing is inevitable, that the companies which are looking at digital transformation, I mean, those things have really dramatically changed, all across the world. So if you see the amount of investment that's happening, I mean, there's 10 trillion will be invested in automation in the next 10 years in US alone. So if you sort of really look at that, I mean, that's a massive amount of money which is going to go in. Robots are going to be used more and more. I mean, for example, people started using robots in warehouses because of social distancing. It was to an advantage, but it's also going to become part and parcel of how people work in general. So we will see a lot more of human machine algorithm interface.
Right. And as you say that, Abhijit, of course, I was wondering if there was going to be, there'll be enough number of people who say that, we will have full-fledged work from office after the pandemic ends. So possibly we have a good data set to believe that yes, hybrid is going to stay even in the in post-COVID world. But at this point, I also wanted to come to you, Saili, and ask you this: that what do you see as potential challenges of the hybrid workplace? I mean, yes, we talk about flexibility. We talk about, we'll have to be more resilient as an organization. But what are those certain things that we definitely have to guard against, in this new workplace model?
People wearing pajamas to office, I'm terrified of that.
I'm sure. And as you tell us that, I would also like to invite our participants to tell us, what sort of challenges do you foresee, or perhaps you are already, facing, as you go along in this new hybrid workplace. Yeah, over to you, Saili.
Yeah, so I think there are very real challenges of the hybrid model where people might face a lack of connection with their teams. I mean, my hybrid for me might work that I work Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and I sit on a beach and work on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. For you, it might mean Thursday, Friday. So what does that mean? I never see you. Or do the teams have to be designed of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday people, and a different team has to be made of the Thursday, Friday people or the morning shift people? Like, how do you then think of teams versus people's flexibility, and how do you manage that? So individual contributors, for example, like many engineering roles in our company and data science roles, etc., could potentially be thought of as fully flexible because there are not a lot of teams dependent on their output on an immediate day-to-day basis. Of course, they are connected to the larger organization goals, but day-to-day others are not affected. So something that I think we will need to figure out is how much is it affecting the interpersonal connections that makes teams tick, that makes teams aligned on a common mission and a common drive to meet their targets or to meet their product goals and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a real challenge, and I think we'll learn as it evolves and evolves to grow. I think it could mean that you have some social days where you do bring the entire team together, and then you still continue building on that trust and connection, and people then have flexibility rest of the week or rest of the month or something. So we have to develop some models that work for everybody. But I think on the pros, cons, or challenges list, I do feel more opportunity versus the challenge. I think there is more to be unlocked, more to be seen in terms of innovation, and more to be learned from the empathy of people being from different backgrounds. Earlier, I think offices became more and more uh, common culture wise because people lived in an area, the kids went to the same school. It became more and more of a common culture versus having a diverse culture where people live in totally different kind of settings and do different things in their life, and so on. So I think those are some of the things that could bring more benefits versus not, but we will need to keep an open mind and learn.
Absolutely. I like how you see the glass half full. And of course, people are also sharing, their insights in terms of what will be potential challenges and also offering solutions. And maybe that's something that we will also do towards the end, collectively, think of some ideas that could help us build connections in the hybrid workplace. But I'd like to, read out a few comments from the chat. IT infrastructure needed at both locations, logistics of moving it, defining collaboration hours at workplace and productivity and focus hours space will be crucial in the hybrid work environment. I like what, I'm not able to see the name. I think it's Vineet Aswani who's saying office politics. Would that die naturally? And what happens to inclusivity? Let me come to you, Abhijit, first, and I'll go to Saili then.
I think politics. We tend to kind of look at politics as the place where we stop being effective. And the other person continues. We define that to be political and bad. But everybody is essentially political because when you look at resources which are less than the number of people that you need, people have to find a way to influence the other person to get that. In an organizational setting, it happens. Politics is part of the family settings, family dynamics. When you go to, make choices, it triggers emotion. So managing that is going to become an important part of the skill. So understanding emotions, dealing with emotions is going to become very much a part of the skill. And So when you look at that, I think that's also going to change. It's going to look different. For example, politics on WhatsApp, is different from politics when you meet friends in real life. So the other day, somebody was saying that, you wish everybody in the morning, because I'm a morning bird, you wish everybody first thing in the morning at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you wish happy birthday. When it came to my birthday, I noticed that you had seen the birthday wishes, but you wished me only at 9 o'clock at night. So, why there's discrimination? And I said, my God, I never thought about somebody tracking all of that. I mean, that's politics for you. So it's not that unusual. The method and the format changes. So we will see politics in the online world as well, where you call the boss separately and give him or her the office gossip. That's going to be. So there are multiple ways.
Don't you
Human
think it's
beings
a
are
little
very,
hard
very
to pick up
ingenious.
the phone and gossip? I think the, water cooler sort of, environment and corridors sort of attract gossip more as against, really making that
Among
effort.
peers,
You will be
yes,
surprised. The guard goes down in a chat even more than in person, right? So you'll be surprised.
totally,
I
totally
don't
agree.
think I think we are learning to cross barriers when we have relationships online. We have all kinds of relationships online, gossip included, right? So I think
if if people are able to have online dates and online sort of intimacy, there is no reason why gossip cannot happen online. So that's a myth. It very much is there. Ask people how office politics goes on online. So
Well,
I don't think of
you're
that.
also leaving a digital trail. I meant to say that, because words, it's more hear and say, but when you look at chatting and talking about it, I think somewhere people are conscious about the fact that this can be read. Anyhow, well, there are some interesting comments coming in the WhatsApp is a gossip facilitator. Nitin is
I
talking about. Yeah, I'm sure. And so something that I sort of came across just yesterday, not a challenge per se, but I just wanted to sort of hear from you. What would it be like? Now that in fact, ET just reported yesterday that if you are relocating or you are moving to your hometown, then you could have a pay cut, right? And that's what's getting talked about, evaluated at least for the services industry. So what is your sense? Will the compensation structures get altered in the hybrid workplace model?
But it's always been that way. Think about organizations when they are putting somebody in the Indian context. When you have somebody living and working out of Mumbai, the cost of living is very different. Housing is very expensive there, so you have a certain kind of a cost of living there. Whereas if you stayed in Nainital, it would be very different. It would the cost of living is different. So yes, it does have to be accommodated and adjusted for. But I think we are going to see far more, differentiation, not necessarily through compensation, but through benefits. So that is my hypothesis and take.
Right. Sally, any thoughts from you?
I think a little differently in terms of the compensation, in the sense that, see, if I want an employee to be a part of my organization, if I want somebody to fit that role, then I'll make it work, right? So maybe to Abhijit's point, they need to be in Nainital, but they need their own room and they need the tech and they need the fiber to reach them. And maybe that's where I contribute versus direct salary. However, I do think that it's all about where the people want to be, right? So if somebody moves from Bombay to Nainital, then while I might think that the cost of living in Nainital is lower, the employee can and should think that now sitting in Nainital, instead of just that one company in Bombay, I should be able to work in companies in Bangalore or London or what have you, right? And they should actually think that now I have more options. So maybe they negotiate a higher salary. I'm not commuting. I'm not pissed off. I'm a happy person. I'm a much better employee now. So you better pay me more for me to continue remaining happy and working for you in any kind of city. So it really depends on the person and how they take this up, right? And how the company takes it up.
Right.
So that's how I would think about
So yeah, what's being reported is that if transport allowance was something that you were getting as part of your salary, now if you're not traveling and if you are working from your hometown, then maybe that can go away. But Wi-Fi connection, let's say broadband connection, or any other infrastructure that help that you need, probably those reimbursements are going to get offered. So, on that note, if we were to really look at, what it would be like, and I just wanted to sort of check with our participants, tell us how comfortable would you be taking a pay cut if you could work from your hometown? Let's say you are from Nainital, you could work from the hills. You don't have to travel to work every day. You don't have to live in a city like Delhi. Um, if that transport allowance was to go away, would you be okay?
I mean, it's, even if I can just take a minute, that even when people have been home, now during the pandemic, their home budget has been adjusted in different ways. They may not have been able to go out to eat, but, people may be ordering in. So, sometimes those buckets change. And in some cases, of course, depending on the individual circumstances, you may make different choices. So I think we'll see that's probably going to be the biggest shift, that
Right.
usually organizations have one rule that fits everyone. We are going to have one rule that fits one person. I think that's going to be a massive leap and transition.
Yeah. Of course, Sagar, as you said, nobody's going to say yes to a pay
Everybody,
cut,
yes.
but that's something that is in the offing. So, if let's say that transport allowance, just that bit was to go away, and considering you're saving all of that cost and getting reimbursed, for something else that is helping you, work better. So yeah, that may happen, but yes, who likes pay cuts? And 83% people are anyway saying that they wouldn't want to take a pay cut even if they get to work from their hometowns. So that's interesting, and we'll see how the compensation structures, really evolve in this new, hybrid model. Right now, it's just perhaps more in the proposal stage. But I think there are some questions that are coming up from our audience as well, and I would encourage that you ask more. I think some of you are also raising your hands. Please know this, that audio and video is disabled. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. I think there was a few things that were coming up on employee engagement. But I think there was one that Kiran was asking on productivity check. And, she's saying, would like to know what suggestions do you have in the virtual scenario when, productivity is something that could be a bigger challenge, and how do you really track that? Any thoughts, Abhijit, Saidi, any one of you would?
Yeah. Sally, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Abhijit.
Okay, all right. So I think, we'll have to move from a scenario where if you're letting people work at their own comfort level, somebody wakes up a little later than others. Somebody is a morning bird, somebody is a late night bird. So, letting people do that, the moment you have that flexibility, then automatically, tracking hours or minutes by the laptop becomes that much harder as a measure. So, measuring output based on agreed timelines, that, you'll complete this report or this piece of work in, by 10 o'clock tomorrow, is a better way to negotiate that, rather than to say, tell me if did you work from 8 in the, what did you do from 8 to 9? So, I think the focus on output rather than effort is going to become more and more prevalent as a way of doing that. And I think organizations have no choice but to learn to work with and trust their own employees a lot more. So that's going to be new for the managers, but that's something they don't have a choice. They will have to trust the employees.
Right, absolutely. Saili, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think there'll be a lot of tech tools that will develop to help with that, right? While KRAs, etc., take care of the broader annual kind of performance or quarterly performance, there will be tool like, for example, we used to have a different set of tools to monitor tasks, right? Like Scrum activities to manage a product or project kind of timelines and tasks. I think teams will evolve to have their own tasks and make sure that they are not blocking anybody else, so have a pipeline of tasks and be sure that they'll be able to finish theirs so that they're not impacting anybody else, or call out any red flags if any task is getting delayed or any dependency is not fulfilled. I think there'll be process and product innovation to kind of support this kind of activity. So I think future of work has become its own stream of work, right? So there are a lot of products and processes coming up, a lot of startups coming up, a lot of people building towards the future as they imagine it, right? So it is open for everybody's imagination, but people are thinking of these challenges, that is it enough to chat with people on Slack, and is that enough of a team spirit, or how do you build a team spirit? So how do you help people come together? Zoom calls are not enough, so how do you do that? Sometimes the empathy is lost, the tone is lost in a chat, so how do you help with that?
Right.
Are emojis enough to convey tone? So many ideas are getting worked on with the whole future of work as a goal, right? And I think that's where we will see a lot of tools coming up to support this idea, but we'll also learn about the possibilities when the tools do come up. That, okay, if you can monitor and trust your employees because all the tasks are available and visible for you to see as a manager, do you really need FaceTime then? Do you really care about FaceTime then? Does
Right.
the meritocracy become more fairer, right? Like, does it become less about who likes who, but actually become about the output and output only? So a lot of these things will come about, and the tools getting developed for this is very exciting. Like, I love this work stream of future of work. I love the tools that are coming out of it, and I think like Zoom is competing with the airlines, right? You can't really say you have to go meet somebody in person, because people are questioning that now, right? Like,
Right.
do you really need to?
Okay.
And it's stressful for somebody who loves travel like me. If people are going to not meet me in person, then how do I travel? But jokes aside, these are the real things that are coming together. And as Zoom wins against airlines, we will see a change in work dynamic for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, I will speed up a little bit now. I think there are, a lot of questions that are coming our way. And Abhijit, this one perhaps, I'll come to you first. Shubha is asking, how do you enable the campus grads, freshers, experience the work culture, office behaviors? How do you enable a shift in their mindset from campus to corporate in this new work model?
So thanks. That's a great question. You know, one of the first shifts that happens from campus to corporate is that the campus is a lot more structured, at least the way we have experienced in-person campuses. Though the last 1 year, a lot of people have gotten used to this whole concept of a virtual campus, which everybody felt they were missing out on the campus experience. But the way you sort of bypass that entire process at the workplace is that you have to become a lot more self-driven. So when you work from home, that's something that you have to look for. One thing I would recommend is being able to set up individual meetings and conversations which are not necessarily related to work, and doing those for short periods of time. Most people, when they set up meetings, I notice that they set up meetings for 45 minutes to an hour, just saying that I've just joined and I want to spend some time with you. Um, it's harder for most people, but you are better off doing 30-minute spread and 10-minute intervals over 3 days is far easier for people to do. And you build with that gap, and with that conversation back and forth, you are more likely to build. So this is counterintuitive, but that's one of the ways in which you can build deeper connect when you meet people for shorter duration, but more often. So I would focus on that. The second thing is that asking people questions through multiple forums. So leveraging, let's say, a meeting spot to ask a question, understand that, and then doing a follow-up with somebody. That's another way to do it. The third is to really set up, conversations where you can share ideas and sort of, just asking people about the history of how something has been done. A lot of people will be very happy to tell you about the past kind of scenarios. And that's one place in which you build comfort, not only with that person, but also you begin to understand a lot of the, tacit knowledge which is there with people.
To that
So
point,
these are
very
three
quickly,
things.
Abhijit, if you could also tell us, how do you see campus recruitments happening, in this new work environment, especially bulk hiring, right? So for which we were, going to colleges and everything. Now, do you see a shift there as well?
Hiring for one is going to be one of the areas which is going to increasingly at all levels become automated. So you will see a lot more of hiring being done through algorithms, video interviews, all of that, automated chatbots. So in varying degrees of automation, you will see that. Campus hiring is a great place where this kind of automation will be there. So one of the ways to stand apart from the crowd is to build a sharper online portfolio which people can look at and get an understanding of the kind of person that you are. So for example, when people post some content on GitHub when they're doing coding, if you post it on GitHub or GitLabs, I mean, so those are places where people can go and see the kind of work that you are doing. Two, the kind of portfolio, your ability to help others. If I know, and there are names, for example, on Twitter, I know that there are people who, if you ask a question, they are very quick to respond. And if that's a person that I'm looking to hire, the person says that, we've interacted on Twitter. I would love to work for your organization. I mean, those are ways in which people do differentiate themselves. So I think the method of differentiation is going to be not in that 10-minute interview, but it's going to be what you do more consistently online.
No, absolutely. I think on that note, I also want to go to performance. Now, Kubera is asking, how do you manage performance, in this hybrid workspace? And Sally, if you could take that first.
So for me, it's a combination of two things. One is the ability to manage the completion of tasks or the output-oriented tracking, right? So for many types of roles, whether it is operations roles, services, which can be distributed into small tickets. So every task can be cut down into subtasks, and those can be monitored to closure. Then I think it can be tracked and mapped to one person. So I think the output orientedness will be required in a lot of operations kinds of jobs. And if people are doing what they're supposed to do, and obviously there is some checking, so quantity, quality, timeliness, etc. If all of these measures are met, which is clearly established first with the employees, that this is what we are expecting out of you, this is how it's going to be measured, and then once the measurement is there, then there is clear and fair data that is shared with them, then I think it's a clear performance management. But however, it's not always just that, right? It is always the qualitative aspects as well, and that's where the manager being connected with the team and watching how they contribute to the team's overall work, whether they contribute to team meetings, etc. As long as those are the expectations shared with the employee, that you will be expected to communicate this way, you will be expected to train at least these few new people, you'll be expected to mentor at least one new person, etc. If these are the set expectations, then I think performance can be measured against them. And obviously different teams and different kinds of work will have to be measured differently, but there'll be some tools and there'll be the qualitative aspects, I think. But I do believe that people will need to change their own appraisal technique to move away from the face time kind of thing, from the long hours kind of perception, to more output driven exercises.
I wanted to, double click on this a little bit more, Abhijit. And, this I'm sure is going to be a concern for a lot of startups and, MSMEs as well. Now, is there something that you have picked up and you've seen that companies have started doing who have already prepared for this hybrid, sort of a model? Are there any best practices that you could share with our participants in terms of, if they are not already doing it, then what is it that they can take some learnings from?
For performance management?
That's right, yeah.
So for the method that I have seen working really well is looking at I think spending a little more time in goal setting, which is really looking at what is the output for each person, rather than so when you work in the office, you're in a co-located environment, it's much easier if you put a team goal which is not necessarily divided into the to the last person's size. Whereas when you're working online, think about the fact that you can't give a complete pizza to the team and say, guys, divide for yourself. It's best done, that what is the reason why we are doing the task, to clarify that in the team, so everybody has a common understanding, but each task is then carved exactly according to the role of the individual. So that's the big difference. It gets reversed.
Right. And I also think somewhere, the tech solution is going to play such a crucial role, right? So what really works for your kind of context, what can really give you, maybe if you have to go for an integrated solution that talks to multiple, talent management processes, for you to be able to, do an effective performance conversation as well. for your employees, as again something which is more best of the breed sort of a solution. And for smaller businesses, typically, for large companies, we know that there could be this massive infrastructure that enables that, and goal setting if it were to get automated. Yeah, and maybe you will learn more as we go forward in this series, because we have one section where we're going to talk about performance management only. So do look forward to that. On that note, I also wanted to pick up this question from Shilpa. So she's saying it is noticed employees work more hours and undergo stress while working from home. How can HR handle these situations better? And we've seen those blurring of lines. So while there is a lot of flexibility, somewhere the weekends, the concept of weekends has somehow also gone away. So what would you say to that? Siley, if I could start.
Historically,
Sorry. Okay,
sorry.
go ahead, Abhijit.
No. Well, let her. I thought, I was.
So one thing that really worked well for us to call it out. Sometimes it takes a type of boss who's actually having errands themselves, himself or herself. But sometimes it takes that calling it out, right? People might not realize, they might not have the level of chores that you have. They might not have dependents as might. So the decision makers sometimes are oblivious. Sometimes you have to just call it out. So, for example, in my team, we had to call it out that, dude, I need to cook lunch. This is not happening. 12 to 2 is blocked out. And then there were a lot of people who actually put up their hands and said, yeah, we need that too. We have to support like lunch, dinner times. We have to support putting the children to bed kind of times. There is a lot of different things. And so what we agreed on then is that, okay, 10 to 12 in the morning, and then 2 to 6, and then so on and so forth. Other times where most of us will try to be available, and if we are not, then we let the team know why we might not be available on Slack, WhatsApp, what have you. And then the other times, you have to let the team go, right? I mean, managers need to be made cognizant, and there needs to be that channel of communication that this is not working. This is really, somebody needs to just call it out. Lunch banana hai. Tum banayega, mere ko bhejega to nahi, right? So I think the call out is important. While I'm joking about it, I feel the communication becomes even more important.
Right. So, Siley, what you talk about is more on this sensitization side. And I think, it's also part of culture. Abhijit, I wanted to ask you this, that is there a way for us to also maybe look at some policies that could guard against this? And, while the question is what can HR do, is there a route of policies and procedures that can be taken, considering the sensitization and the culture building, will perhaps happen, but if you have to really put some stringent practices in place, is there another alternative to this?
Yeah, sure. So Neha, I think the role of HR comes in setting three things: people, process, and technology. So, talking to the leaders to say, what are some of the things which, they need to set an example for. For example, if you're, the more flex that you want in terms of start and end time, the longer the workday gets for everybody. Because if I start my workday at 12 o'clock, and I've had that scenario, the first startup where I consulted, my time was supposed to be, the office time is at 8 o'clock. So I landed up in the office, but you find that most of the decision makers show up at 11 o'clock. And when you talk to them, they'll say that, but we work here till 11 o'clock at night, which is true. But then for me, it impacts my work. So agreeing on common time, agreeing on a start and a stop time, agreeing on something which is a sacred time, which is for the family, whether it's weekends or after a certain time of the day. I mean, those are things that you have to take a conscious call and sort of put that down. That becomes the basis, because then it's a little bit like saying that if I give you a plain sheet of paper, and there's actually a little very interesting study which showed that when kids are brought into a playground and told that you can play, do what you like, whether you can play any game that you like, they spend a lot more time making up the rules than if you said that, okay, we will play football, because they know the rules and that they can, straight away go and play that football. They get more play time. I think keeping that example in mind is a good way to understand that when the rules are known, it gives people more flex.
No, absolutely. Wonderfully said. At this point, I think I will move forward and also take two questions which Jasdeep is asking, and I think both are important ones. He's saying, considering hybrid is the way forward, what's the impact going to be on real estate and shared services? And of course, the limited social interaction. Is there, a rise in mental health crisis? Maybe that's what he wanted to ask. So, Saili, if you'd like to take that first.
So there are different points here, right? One is that due to people are at home the whole time, they might not have the right infrastructure, they might not have space in the house, they might even have a different persona at home. There are many people who are managing different personas depending on the line of work at home versus at work. So a lot of things might mix up and create issues with home or with work, right? So one way or the other, there are issues that are leading to insensitivity towards inequality, right? So the management might have separate rooms, headphones, workstations, but a lot of the employees might not have that. Their child needs the same machine for school, etc. So there are a lot of these considerations that create discontent, that create issues, and I think HR needs to figure out ways to solve it, either by giving the infra required or by making office spaces available. Sometimes I really think that it should be neighborhood work centers, right, where it could be shared office spaces in lots of different neighborhoods that reduces commute times but lets people have a workspace and important distance from the home routine and also the separation between home and work. I think some of these innovations in real estate could really go a long way forward in helping people balance what they need to do. I think on the mental health front, there are two or three things, right? For many people, if they are living alone, then this has led to a lot of loneliness, and they have figured out that it is getting increasingly difficult. Some have gone home to their hometowns, some have tried to soldier through, but I think there needs to be access. So I think one of the things that HR really needs to be caring about is to have that access. And maybe HR is not the right person because people have issues, right, that it will affect my comp or my appraisal or anything. So HR maybe needs to provide an external confidential channel for employees to have mental health support. And I think that is essential.
Right.
A lot of women have taken the brunt of the workload as well as the mental overload during this crisis, because a lot of the home and childcare issues land primarily with the women. Unfortunately, that is the case in India, and they have faced severe issues. Many had to either drop work or or were given a lot of guilt for prioritizing work along with the family, or uh, they used to be able to escape that once they went to work and have a work persona which was more confident, which was stronger. But now it is a mixed persona without any break. So I think the external confidential channel has to be given, because otherwise the employee is going to have issues connecting with the management or with HR. So I think that is something that all companies really, I think I'm very glad somebody asked this question. I think it's a very important area that companies and HR needs to focus on and help people.
And I think, in some ways, those employee assistant programs have always been in place, right, for any sort of mental health issues that people may be experiencing. But what I also gather is that in 2020, that actually got consumed quite a bit. A lot of people were reaching out for help, and some organizations have actually started working on, certain benefits around this. If they could maybe have a fund or, some other services that could help people really reach out. And at this point, I wanted to come to you, Abhijit, and I was also wanted to check with you if there's something that you've picked up in terms of the whole mental health crisis that we experienced in 2020, and perhaps will it'll continue in 2021 as well. Is there something that organizations can do differently apart from the usual assistance programs in place?
So I think building on mental health is going to become a far bigger challenge than we've ever seen before. So that's definitely going to be there in the horizon. One of the pieces of research that I found really interesting is the acknowledging issues of loss, loss of familiar structures, loss of familiar relationships, loss of opportunities. Many of these things, actually, as people are experiencing those, the role of the manager is to be, to become really like the first aid provider when it comes to understanding the issues of loss and grief. Those are things that we've never really expected or trained managers to be able to do. But I think when people can do that in the first port of call, it becomes much easier. But if the first port of call, and by the way, I am a big proponent of having the employee assistance programs. But if your first port of call is not inside the organization, it's also indicative of the fact that there is a certain element of lack of trust. And because even within the family, if people are able to talk to somebody within the family and address that, whoever that might be, it can be somebody, a sibling, a cousin, a peer, an uncle, whatever it is, but if that happens, it actually leads to a better support system at a shorter notice than, let us say, talking to a trained counselor outside. The person is highly skilled and trained, but the probability of something getting done which changes the work setting, that gets known only when somebody in the workplace addresses it. So I think that's a big one for organizations to look at.
Right. And on that note, I think I'd like to tap into the collective wisdom of the group. There are 100 participants in this session here with us. I want to bring up my Menti screen once again, and I actually want to know from people, what is it that we can do collectively, to build better connections at this new hybrid workplace. Some practices that you may have already experimented with, which could help us learn from each other. So just allow me a moment as I bring up my screen. And the moment I want that screen, it sort of goes away. Okay, right here, you know the drill. Use your mobile devices or use a separate browser window. Go to menti.com. Use the code 2457930. And let's together think about those ideas that will help us build better connections in the distributed digital workplace, considering there is quite a bit of mental health crisis that we've experienced last year and perhaps will continue to do this year as well. Well, we talk about empathy and resilience, but how do we really build it? What is it that we do? Okay, there are some ideas coming our way. Virtual connects, online water cooler conversations, coffee meets, regular digital engagements, a liberal, flexible remote working policy, support from home infra setup, establish reporting rhythm to connect with others till it becomes a habit, be self-reflective to become more approachable. Interesting. Common team meeting once in a month, personal meet, virtual interactive session. No work days, half days, modules and guided programs and resilience. Okay, formation of work from home training and wellness committee, which would help in guiding employees. And Abhijit, this reminds me of our conversation on that future of HR jobs report, which had a work from home facilitator, you recall?
Yes, of course, and the fact that letting people, um, I think having some kind of a support even for mental health. Also, I think we'll need to question our workday. Our workday is still 5 days a week or 6 days a week. I mean, I think when you look at, it's just like when you look at online sessions. an online session cannot be a full day session. People would just die of boredom. Yeah, but it needs to be shorter. So I think in this whole time when we are working online predominantly, uh, the workday needs to be looked at differently. And my recommendation, therefore, is to have a 4-day workday. So I don't know whether that's going to lead to a lot of enthusiastic take on from the employers, but we have to have a more distributed workday.
Yeah, some,
Potentially,
yeah, no, go ahead.
y-
Sorry.
go ahead. No,
No, I was saying some tech companies have already taken the leap, right? And I also know that some companies are offering mandatory, day offs as well during the week. So yeah, of course, some people have taken a leap, and I think there is enough case built around that as well. But yeah, how many are going to really follow that trend? That I'm not sure about.
yeah, it's really like saying that in a unusual setting like this, we have never ever been prepared for this, and therefore to pretend as if nothing has changed in the world and we are just continuing, it just happens to be there. It's just insensitive way of looking at it. So I definitely think that some kind of way of finding ways to break that rhythm. So potentially work a little longer on, let's say, one of the days. If you work longer on Monday, maybe take a Tuesday off and then work a little longer on Wednesday, and then you Wednesday, Thursday, and then you Friday, you kind of end up a little earlier, and then you get so just maybe alternate days, not necessarily a 5-day as Saturday, Sunday off, but in between maybe a Wednesday and a Friday off kind of a thing.
No, absolutely. And I think with that, we are actually at the end of our time. We will share that, word cloud with you. So all the, ideas that you shared to build better connections in the workplace, we'll definitely share that with you. Of course, there's going to be, a takeaway document as well from our conversation here today. But before we let you go, also tell us if, the session was a useful investment of your time, if you will recommend this session to others, and if you have any suggestions for improvement, feel free to share with us in the chat window there. Of course, feedback is a gift. So please go ahead and tell us how you felt about the session today. Like we had mentioned earlier, this is a 3-season series. This is a first episode of season 1 of Hybrid Workplace 2025. There are a lot more conversations that are lined up and in different formats. So there may be other content pieces that you will get, right from podcasts to articles to a lot of reading material. So stay tuned. We will catch up with you once again, one more time for more. Thanks so much once again. Thank you, Abhijit
Thank you.
and Siley, for sharing all those wonderful insights with our participants. We hope to see you in another session very soon.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone, and have a lovely rest of the day. Bye-bye.